Hello, and welcome to another chapter of Small as an Elephant by Jennifer Richard Jacobson. In chapter 6, we saw that Jack was taking a nap or going to bed, sleeping in the woods, and he heard a strange sound that wakes him up in the middle of a dream. And he's really scared, and it's a really powerful really exciting chapter. Now we're on chapter 7. Chapter 7 starts with African elephants have 2 lobes on the tips of their trunks. Asian elephants only have 1, which zoologists refer to as fingers. These fingers are quite flexible and can grasp objects as small as seeds. It was barely light when he woke, and he was freezing. No way was the Earth's center a ball of fire. At this moment, Jack was certain that the core was an ice cube and that it was sending frozen daggers to its surface. He pulled on his windbreaker, hoping it could stop the cold from penetrating, but it wasn't nearly enough. So he got up. He rolled up his sleeping bag, put on his backpack, and headed into town. First line of order was breakfast. 53 cents wouldn't even buy something on the McDonald's dollar menu, a menu he knew by heart. He'd have to find a grocery store, and even then, what could a handful of change buy? Cereal bars were a lot more than this. Were donuts? He wasn't sure. But looking down, he came up with a solution. Soda cans and bottles. He'd seen M.E. next to M.A. on cans all his life. So he was pretty sure that in Maine, just like in Massachusetts, they were returnable. That meant he could get 5 cents for every drink container he took to the store. He picked up the Diet Coke can at his feet. It was crushed and had been on the side of the road for so long the label was fading away. But he'd hoped they'd take it anyway. On Mount Desert Street, he found a couple of plastic bottles. 15 cents in bottle returns gave him 68 cents in all. He hoped to find enough drink containers to bring him to $1. He had his head down, searching, when he nearly bumped into an old man wearing a plaid hunting jacket. "Look out, son," the man said, not unkindly. "Sorry," Jack blurted. "Hey, could you tell me where the nearest grocery store is?" The man stopped and studied Jack. "You're industrious this morning, aren't you? Go down Roberts Avenue," he said, pointing to the side street next to an inn that looked like a wedding cake. "When you get to the end, turn left." Roberts Avenue had several houses with signs out front. Bed and breakfast places. His mother was always telling him how much she loved B&Bs, how the rooms were all different and old-fashioned. "It's not like going back in time, Jack," she'd say. "You can imagine you're someone else altogether." Jack had never wanted to stay in those places, which looked, at least on the internet, more like fussy homes than hotels. Besides, they never had swimming pools or cable TV, and those were the best things about traveling. But maybe his mother had walked down this very street, and the pool of puffy bedding, lacy curtains, and not being Becky Martell for a while had been too strong to resist. He stood on the sidewalk and tried to imagine which of these places would call to her. The Maples Inn, Canterbury Cottage, Arsgarth Station. He had no idea what an Arsgarth was or why they'd call a house a station, but he bet his mom would pick that one. It had the most unique name, and his mother was drawn to anything that promised a story. Jack decided his search would start there. He left his backpack, the 2 bottles, and the can on the lawn of the B&B behind a little picket fence, and then bravely walked inside. No one was in the entryway, so he rang a little bell. A woman popped her head out from around a doorway. "Is there a Becky Martell staying here?" he asked. "No, I don't think so," she said, but she didn't seem sure. He wandered over to a book and put her glasses on to check. She wandered over to a book and put her glasses on to check. "No, we don't have a Martell. Does she go by her own name?" The question startled Jack. Was she asking if his mother might have registered under a different name? Which seemed possible, what with her wanting to feel like someone else and all. "I mean," said the woman, seeming to read Jack's confusion, "does she have a different name from her husband?" "Oh, she doesn't have a husband," Jack said, perhaps a little too quickly. And then, feeling as if he needed to say more, he added, "She's my aunt. She's coming for a stay on the island, but she must be at another B&B. The woman nodded, but looked at him more carefully now. He tied the clothing around his waist tighter and said, "Thanks anyway," and bolted out the door. He threw on his backpack and was ready to run to the next street over when he realized that his can and 2 bottles were missing. Who would have taken them? Someone else as hungry as he was at this moment? "Threw them in the recycling bin," said a man coming around the corner with a rake in his hand. "It was good of you to pick 'em up." "No!" Should he ask for them back? The man leaned his rake against the porch and went into the B&B. As much as he wanted to run from the place before the lady inside spotted him again, he couldn't bear the thought of leaving the cannon bottles behind. Maybe, Jack thought, the bin's out in back. Maybe in a shed. He could find it and get his can and bottles back himself. Behind the B&B was a hinged wooden box about the height of a trash can, and he guessed it might hold recyclables. After making sure no one was watching, he carefully lifted the lid. If the man appeared again, he would just say he was getting his own bottles back. Sure enough, there they were, on top of a bunch of other soda cans, wine bottles, and even big juice containers. He pulled his can and the two plastic bottles off the top while he calculated the worth of the cans and bottles below. They wouldn't mind, would they, if he took a couple? Sure, they were worth more money, but the man had just taken his, hadn't he? And he hadn't thought a thing of it, which probably meant he was planning to recycle these cans and bottles, not redeem them. What should he put them in? Jack looked under a lid of a second barrel. It was filled with garbage. He spied a handle of a plastic shopping bag and pulled it free. Then he filled the bag with bottles and cans, tallying up nearly $2 worth, trying to shut up the voice in his head that whispered, "You're stealing, you know." Suddenly, something came flying toward him, and the heavy top of the box came crashing down on Jack's right hand. He didn't scream for fear of being caught, but tears jabbed his eyes as he pulled his hand free. It was his pinky, the pinky on his right hand. His pinky was killing him. He stared at the black and white cat that was now perched on top of the box. Its tail twitched as it stared at Jack. Was this a guard cat? Was it protecting the property? Frozen there, holding his hand, Jack recognized a familiar scent coming from the kitchen. Bacon, one of his favorite things. His stomach called out, reminding him that he needed breakfast. No way was he going to get crispy bacon at the grocery store, but he had to get something. He hadn't really eaten since the picnic yesterday, and between the hunger pangs and the throbbing in his pinky, he was in no condition to go searching for his mom. He moved back toward the bin slowly, expecting the cat to hiss or jump at him. Sure enough, the cat crouched, giving only a moment's warning before it leaped into the air. Thankfully, it didn't leap at Jack, but away from him. Jack quickly lifted the wooden cover, grabbed his nearly full plastic bag with his good hand, and ran down the road toward the grocery store. And that's the end of chapter 7. I will see you guys later for another chapter on In Small as an Elephant. Good night.